Hey everybody, and welcome to another Table 13. I'm your host, Wooden Leg, and above me there is Mr. E, and over there is Shady Ankle Bottoms, coming at you from Irrational Radio with STYAB, not you, smarter than your average bugbear. And apparently bugbear is one word, so we don't put two B's at the end. So
We
I
did
learned that.
bugbear once.
I know, but we didn't talk about how it's spelled. I mean, we're probably going to go into that with this. But today
This
we are
is the
talking
fourth
about
time we've used that acronym, or third time we've used that acronym.
Toa,
Sorry.
the Lovecraftian fish people that definitely came from the Isthmus short story that Lovecraft wrote.
Well, they actually, I think a lot of it's. So if you look at their earlier depictions, they look less like something out of that than some sort of it came from the Black Lagoon
Frog
kind of situation.
person.
Yeah. Well, 3.5 and third edition, they look like frogs, but that's about the only one where they get this. Okay. There's this sort of frog-like. I think that's where they introduce the like breeding pools and fingerlings, where they like start as larvae and kind of go through a tadpole situation. Right.
I don't know. I'm looking at a 1E sketch of a Kuo Toa, and it looks pretty much like a fish person. It looks like they made a person and stapled a fish on top of it.
Okay.
Yep.
See, I the ones I saw were like what they show as this. What are they? Sock wagon. We always call them sock wagons because I don't know how you say it right.
Sock wagon.
And but they're like now this kind of creature from the Black Lagoon look, or the Lochliath or Lochliath, whatever, a bunch of weird consonant sounds in that dumb word, but there's about 1 billion of these weird underwater creatures, so they've all kind of mutated a bit to serve different like niches, I guess, in the lore.
And Kuo Toa have definitely evolved into the like Lovecraftian eldritch horror kind of lore in 5e, specifically 5e.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to
Fourth edition, they got that big, like, there's a big, sorry, I had to cut you off here, but there was a big, like, introduction of this, like, congenital madness, which they've had this history. You keep talking about the meta rather than going through more detailed stuff, but, like, they kind of had this involvement with the illithids or mind flayers or whatever. Those they were fucked up by them psychically for a long time in their history for a couple editions previous, but I think in fourth they turned that into like the result of that being this congenital madness situation. It might have been a bit earlier than that, but that's where they start like worshiping eldritch horrors and abeloths and things like that. But so that's where, you definitely start to lean into this Lovecraftian, like scary, paranoid fish people that crazy slowly, like, body snatch a village or something. Yeah.
So they, a quick description, they are in 5e described as like humanoid fish people. The hunchbacks, large head that is kind of that no neck, gills along the edges, cold clammy skin, ropey twisted muscle. They're pretty strong. They've got a strength of 13, so they can like out push a average civilian, but that's only a +1 on a strength modifier, so it's not too terribly strong. But in a large group, they can be very dangerous. They've got large bulbous eyes, unblinking fish eyes that actually see very well in the dark. I think up to 250 feet in pitch black, which is real good.
They can also move independently of each other, which is
like
creepy.
Chameleons or whatever.
Yep.
And they have, as a result of this, like, the existential madness thing, they see into the veil or what? Is that still in fifth? I thought they brought that back, right? Where they they can see invisibility or invisible and ethereal creatures, I think it is.
So it's almost
impossible to double check
creep up on them.
But they're, like as this thing. And so they're just, the unblinking eyes that kind of just like see more, they're like staring off at something that's right behind you kind of shit. And like it's super unsettling.
Just one eye just slowly following something. Not great. They absolutely hate service dwellers. So if you are a role-playing group of non like reptilian or non-amphibian party members, they will attack you on sight. And even reptilian, they have a long history of hatred towards reptilian species as well. But generally, surface dwellers, they will attack on sight, no talking. In terms of reptilian, you may find more reasons to parlay with them than if you were a warm-blooded surface dweller. They just, for the collapse of their empire, they used to own everything in the Forgotten Realms, and over millennia and millennia, they've been slowly pushed into deeper and deeper caves and deeper parts of the ocean until they basically have nothing in the surface, nothing in normal caves, at least in the Forgotten Realms.
Yeah, and I mean, from what I've read, or it looks like it kind of changes a bit, or as they go through the editions. But it sounds like there's a couple different stories since you get back past, in the prehistory of prehistory. In this, it's like pre-giant and dragon wars situations. That's before the lizard folk had their like Saurus-based empire going on. That's when these like the Kuo Toa were messing around and like had their big empires and were running things. So it's like super way back then. So like there's a couple of different reasons they talk about some of the sea dwelling, modified races fucking stuff up in the deeps and causing them to kind of retreat back that way or something. And there's others that talk about surface dwellers pushing them off, or the illithids being involved in that directly, sort of their victimization causes them to recoil into isolation sort of situation. And
we're a slave race
all these
for
an extended like the illithids did their best to kind of mold them into a slave race, and it was a failed experiment essentially.
And now they're all crazy. All of the Kuo Toa have some kind of epidemic madness, and they even have parts of their like society that are structured to take care of madness or rein the madness in so it doesn't end up destroying the entire culture and the entire society. Which is
because it can like spread like a like if one goes, then there might be people in the area who go too or whatever, right? Like it's like a pandemic sort of thing. Like
pandemic madness. Not great.
No.
Speaking of which, wear a mask and don't
wear a fucking don't get
So they do also, like we talked about the Eldritch Horror thing, and they are very close to the Underdark and the the Far Realms in Forgotten Realms, where that also warps your mind. And through all this mind warping and all this brutalization by the Illithid Empire, the Kuo Toa have an interesting ability in that if enough of them get together and believe in something, or that something is true, that has a potential to become real, which leads to a lot of really fun role-playing moments in terms of, like, they're called the Godmakers, but their main deity is called Bildulpul. B-I-L.
I hate their name so much.
Blibdoolpoolp. So
Bildulpul, I think it is. Or,
yep.
I think, but Ploop or whatever.
Ploop,
but Lady B.
Yep. I like that.
Or something.
Lady B. Yeah, that's much better. I like that much better.
But no, I stole that from somebody's video, I think.
Oh, really? Okay, well,
somebody
that's
called it.
Refer to her.
Yeah, it's way easier than. But she's basically this like brood mother goddess essentially, right? Like sort of keeper of. There it is.
Yep. Yes.
Yes.
Mushmouth. North.
And but they also talk about them. I think they still kind of occasionally worship the like Abeloths and Elder Chores and things like that. That they were saying they don't recognize the manipulations or whatever. But I mean, theoretically though, there could be any number of these like gods running around in effective, little divine entities that have been created and even abandoned potentially by groups of these. But I love that they have this like like Warhammer lore, if you're familiar. They're like the orcs. in that belief, being strong enough that it alters the fabric of reality thing, is really cool. It's a funny concept, and it gives this really interesting meta idea behind your world that maybe like they're at the bedrock of why all gods exist somehow or something, and like they're really, if they were to all really be run out of existence somehow, that, the entire divinity falls apart or whatever. And they're also old. They're like these really cool MacGuffin races that can be around for things that nobody else would have known anything about, sort of deal.
It's really neat. Yeah, they and also their god, Bill little Lady B, is also says that she hoards knowledge, like ancient knowledge about the universe.
That's right.
But refuses to let anyone know about it, it means it's impossible to know if that's legitimate or not. So again, this is like an idea, like in terms of your own universe, you could have her hold some kind of, or be rumored to hold some kind of knowledge that the role players are looking for, and this could directly involve this race in the campaign that you're running. Is there, because of their like nature, you could have them be secret keepers of knowledge that may not be worth anything to the role players. That's you gotta watch out for that.
That's the best explanation for the what happened to the mountain post. I don't remember if you guys remember that, but like, oh yeah, the local Kuo Toa tribe that lived in like a lake on the peak, like gave it sentience and it walked the fuck away. But that's awesome. Yep. That's a great adventure hook too. It's just like, what the hell? Someone stole our lighthouse. Like, who does that? And it's just chilling, like in the bay, out about 2 miles or something, scraping ships up. Like, oh my god.
What I think is neat, and what you could do with them, with Kuo Toa, is sort of this madness that they have, right? It's sort of like the fact that they can see the invisible, they can see the ethereal. Those things are real. Like, those things are there, and their madness sort of describes them seeing it, and their madness also somehow, you could tie that to their creation of tulpas. It's like they're like some kind of fallen builder race that that can see and like have these abilities to create and to see what's not there, but it's sort of like hidden behind this madness that they've sort of incubated within them, which kind of could be really neat to come across some really like ancient shit that Kuo Toa put there and just don't remember it because they're all insane.
I can't remember the guy's name, but there's someone the Awakened who, God, escaped the madness somehow. I think I can't. That's about all I can remember about that. So I hate to just pull that out of nowhere and not be able to cite more than that.
But the Awakened.
There you go.
Member of the Kuo Toa species. That represents fishmen.
But essentially, they like the concept that I was getting at with that is that it's not unprecedented that there could be some pocket somewhere that we're able to maybe escape this menace, or that is still maybe keeping true to these ancient tradition type situations that you've got, that maybe you need them to know about so that they can be involved in sending the party to the water temple or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Because that's where, like, to me, that's where they fit so well, is they're these super reclusive like peoples that probably hate surface dwellers, but they would also be very keyed into like if there's any world threatening kind of crisis going on, they'd probably know about it and maybe have some important information about, like, because they saw the powers that set it up rise and fall or whatever. But yeah, that the madness thing, that's another bit that I think if you can look at other ways to describe it that isn't just like basically PTSD from their time with the Illithids. The one of them that I heard, I think it was AJ Pickett, was they have like there's like a brain mite or something, like a parasite situation, because it's really common in deep sea fish. And I was thinking about that. That'd be kind of cool if there was this illithid based brain mite kind of situation going on that was common with the deep sea ones. And
That's
so
an
there are
interesting
these
idea.
some subsets that are
Yeah.
you know, these vicious, violent, paranoid, you know, monstrosities, but the other ones are just like, you know, any other sort of, you know, probably have like a shamanistic kind of situation going on or whatever. Still probably crazy, but more, you know, neutral crazy than neutral evil crazy or something.
Right.
Chaotic neutral maybe, but
It did mention there was somewhere it was talking about that the evil that Kuo Toa are associated with is not inherent to them. It's very much brought on by the 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 society and that sort of like theocratic, despotic sort of empire that exists within it. You know, with these different tiers of priests that are basically out to make sure everybody's not doing anything other than what they want. Um, you know, and I think a lot of that sort of just stems from their ability or their weak-willed nature and their
right.
inability to sort of separate themselves from that. It did mention like if a Kuotoa escaped and was able to survive on its own, that they're just as likely to end up with neutral or good uh, morals.
Yeah.
They're not
Uh,
predisposed for evil. It's the society and the circumstances that really drive them to
Right.
be
Well, I
crazy
think
evil things.
a society based on you know a people that go crazy is going to be evil. I
Right.
feel like it's
well,
you know
and
either
that's
A between corruption and B the fact that you have to do some probably not great things to make it function properly. You know,
I think yeah, absolutely. There'd be that like, well, they're in really crap. They're pushed to like the shittiest parts of wherever they live. Probably is like kind of their story. Like they kind of keep getting shoved out of where they are into a less desirable, you know, piece of real estate essentially. Which is why they're you know in like these shitty underground subterranean caves on the edge of the Underdark and you know the material plane or whatever. But like I think or whatever, you know, the surface world. But I think that like it's kind of interesting. I fucking lost my train of thought completely. I thought I was going to be able to reel it back in there. But oh, sorry, yeah. So I was going to say that like theocratic sort of system of the caste system that they've got set up is another thing that's really interesting that comes from this belief power thing that they have going on. They're like priests that are powerful enough because of their collective like authority or whatever, I guess, that they can dole out you know power to their like lower subservient the whips I think they're called and they're essentially it's like a warlock patron kind of relationship almost or you know a cleric god relationship like that but it's their basically power they're able to dole that out to somebody else and these things kind of like cause this vicious cycle of like whoever's in charge there's this like yeah feedback loop of whatever their values are kind of reverberate through these weak-willed individuals and like kind of align everybody to the you know everybody toes the party line kind of thing or whatever. But if you had somebody who wasn't a shithead at the top of that who made a you know an entity that wasn't all about the slaughter of every single surface dweller, you could maybe have a reasonable explanation for a society that functions almost exactly the same way but isn't totally awful for everyone who's not like a Kuo Toa.
Drowning hundreds of people for
yeah, probably
poop.
still drowning some people, but like
but the right
you know, not
people.
everybody.
Right.
Yeah. Like, oh, you there? Hey, come. Yeah.
Come here.
Wonderful.
Praise Lady B. So they are most commonly found in three distinct classes, kind of like what we've gone over here. They're the basic Kuo Toa, which have been described as if they don't have any of the higher ranks above them, like whips or archpriests around, they would most likely just run away in a combat scenario. They are like like basically like little goblins. They don't want to sacrifice themselves. It takes a strong-willed Kuo Toa to get them to do anything risky or dangerous. But if they do have a whip present, they can do things like they do have strategy. It's not like they're just mindless beasts that are gonna just run in. And in fact, the organization with the basic ones and the whips, which are like the taskmasters, the foremen of the Kuo Toa, and then you have the archpriests above them. And the regular Kuo Toa just have spears and I think scimitars or daggers, something like that. Some simple single-handed weapon. But the whips have like these pincer staffs, which are basically man catchers.
They're
They're
cool as hell, by the way.
U-shaped sticks that have a 10-foot reach. That whenever you succeed on a melee attack, you can roll a grapple to see if the person is caught, and it's like a DC 13 or something to escape or to resist
Cortex
being
needs
grappled.
one of those, by the way.
God, man, yeah, it's crazy. I actually gave one to my Loxodon monk, one of my players, Loxodon monks, and she does nasty things with it.
I bet.
But
also, they're fish people with man catchers.
Right? I mean, come on. Come on.
It's good.
It's great. So what they'll do is the whip will grab it and then command all his little dudes to just run up and either tie the person up and knock them unconscious, throw whips on or throw nets on them, or just chew them up into nothing. And that's kind of their strategy. And then the archpriests, they have like tons of spell slots and stuff, and they can cast things like mass cure wounds and
like 5th level spells. Yeah, it's like not fooling around.
So yeah, if you
fairly
design
serious spellcasters,
like a Kuo Toa dungeon with like 1 archpriest and then like 5 whips and then 5 Kuo Toa each under those whips are operating as like squads, you can have a very dangerous situation with creatures that I mean, even the archpriest I think is only a CR 10, which in the grand scope of things is not that high. But working together, they can be. I really like these guys, especially in like a combat sense.
Exactly.
Because
the teamwork, cooperative effect that they have with the different classes working together, you can really pin people down pretty effectively. But then they're also, they're gonna be like, they could have sharks, they could have like octopuses, octopod, octopi. I think those are all okay.
I think so. I don't know.
Octopus.
I don't think that's what. I don't think either of those work. But yeah, they're gonna have all kinds of other underwater denizens. They gotta have like a vent that shoots out super hot water that they know about that the other people don't. Like you could build layer actions into this stuff. And if your party doesn't, I mean, it's not super complicated to get a hold of when you're fighting, by the time you're fighting CR10 creatures, but making sure that they can breathe underwater is a serious thing. Yeah. But also attacking underwater is a big deal. Like ranged weapons aren't very effective. You got, if it's not a piercing weapon, melee's a lot more complicated. So there's a lot of things you can do to sort of mix things up, with that isn't that's based on the sort of environment and stuff that they're in. It's going to be dark. It's like all that stuff there.
Kuo Toa can see very well in the dark.
So it's I think that's part of it too, is that it's not just their stats, it's the conditions that they're going to interact with the party under are usually going to be favorable. They're going to find a way that they can take advantage of having their 30-foot swim speed or whatever, the fact that they've got better vision than the party does. That 120-foot dark vision is really nice, and things like that. I think it's they're
nasty little buggers. So there is also a hints of a kind of a fun mechanical thing that you could do with your role players, in that there is a series on YouTube called The Animated Spellbook, and they go over a way, or like hint at it. And I've gone into some more research, and there isn't really a hard and fast system that's been written down, but the idea is if your players score either a critical hit that then kills a Kuo Toa outright, or if they kill like enough Kuo Toa in a single sitting or like in a single round, you roll a d20, and if you roll like above a certain DC based on the like the magnitude of the thing you've done to these Kuo Toa, you can create something called a Kuo Toa God larvae, which is based on the player character that did that feat. And the God larvae's CR is equal to how much you made the DC check to create the God larva is. And then it grows based on the number of Kuo Toa that then see it as it's in the God larvae. And like Kuo Toa will then become like incised with protecting it. And they will like sacrifice themselves to protect this God larvae. And it'll change like their whole dynamic, but like it'll cause more Kuo Toa to swarm in. So yeah, the anime Spellbook was like, this basically turns it into the end of the campaign. The role players are running the fuck out of the Kuo Toa cave, while a big mean version of like their mage sinks slowly beneath the waves as everyone else like looks on in horror, and then the Kuo Toa and this god larva are now gone forever, and they're just like, wow, that's, I guess, Frederick is now ruling Kuo Toa, or like some version of, I don't know, that was a fucked up adventure. But yeah,
how does that manifest? Is that something like one of the or several of them are looking at this person and almost
yes.
deifying them?
Yep, that's exactly what it is. If
okay.
if you like do a critical hit against a Kuo Toa and kill it outright, and there's like 5 of them viewing it, then you roll a d20 of a DC 15 for like the 5 viewing it. And if you make the DC, you create a god larva with a CR equal to however much you made that DC by. So if you rolled a 20, it'd be a CR 5 god larva. And I couldn't find any stats for these things either.
That's crazy.
But I believe
well,
it's just
probably
you
have
take
to
the
make
character
it up. It'd probably
stats
be based on you.
on the character,
right.
yeah, that did the thing.
Or whatever they perceive. I mean, you could, as a DM, take a lot of liberty with something like that, and sort of interpret their actions in terms of how they've impacted the, and then, the Kuo Toa or whatever. But I think that's kind of a cool concept.
Yeah, because this thing is being created by the eyes of this thing that doesn't know as much about you as you do.
Right, exactly.
So if you're running around like you have a big lead pipe that you picked out of the room before, but you're like, that's not what you do, then you just become the god of lead pipes,
right?
Like,
even though you're like,
or you have this tree trunk sized, like gigantic club. Yeah. Oh yeah, right. Yeah, it's like you're like a robot, and
is theorized to actually just be based on a humanoid sculpture that was broken,
right?
And then something made a nest on its head. The
Kuo Toa
were like, oh Jesus, it's a god.
It's a god.
And enough of them believed that she became alive. And so you could do the same thing with your role players, where if he's wearing a helmet, well, now that helmet is his face,
right?
Or
yeah, he's like some weird
kind of thing.
Shelled animal that's got a bunch of eyes and stuff in the slot where the slots are, or whatever. It's like,
but they're based on what your player character looks like. And
it's their interpretation. So what you do, or what your person stands for, doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to have that imprinted upon them, unless that's the context of the interaction you had with them. If you went through and slaughtered a whole bunch of them, you're going to be a god of death and destruction. But if you dealt with some you mediated some conflict between them and the drow, and then maybe you're a protector god or something, and they you make a whole generation of unshitty Kuo Toa happen.
That's a whole adventure there, like that whole deal.
That could be cool.
It's really neat. That's so I saw that and I was like, that's something that no other race has the ability to do. I mean, like, you kill a bunch of goblins, like, there isn't going to be suddenly a CR5 goblin you standing there looking really angry while all these Kuo Toa fall to their knees around it.
I mean, that does get into your super slushy meta weird stuff.
Right.
When you start to ask questions like how did the first gods come about then kind of thing anyway.
Right.
But it is cool to think about, like, no, it's just these guys. Nobody else can do that. All the rest of them, those are actual entities that really exist, that, like, they've got an origin somewhere, which I'm sure there's probably one written for 90% of them.
Oh, yeah, somewhere.
Maybe 80. But
and I'm sure many of them are conflicting stories of that generation too. So yeah, but
the whole world began with one Kuo Toa.
Yeah, right.
Basically, and then he willed into
is all taking
a bunch of little Kuo Toa
within the dream of a Kuo Toa, right?
Right.
We are this world that we're living.
No, I don't like that.
Yeah. Welcome everyone. Oh God.
So kind of continuing on this path of interesting things to do with the Kuo Toa. I do think that they have a lot of. They're one of the races that I find, because they are kind of like that evil Lovecraftian mystery box kind of creatures. There's a lot of room for you to put them into your own universes and your own settings, and have them fill those niches that would be harder to fill with something at least a little bit different, I think. So for instance, a lot of your warlock patrons that exist in your world could be either like Kuo Toa gods, or they could be using the Kuo Toa's god making ability in some way that allows you to gain this power. Or you could do a warlock patron that is trying to rid your world of a Kuo Toa god that's been recently created, that's just causing problems in the celestial sphere. Cool.
That's a cool hook.
Yeah.
Sends the party down to go eradicate every last follower of this one entity that's fucking shit up on the divine scale.
Yeah, because someone killed a whole bunch of Kuo Toa in front of them, and
that's fun.
Couldn't deal with it.
I was thinking of the idea, if there is a god, so like Bane is one in the Faerun setting that just dies all the time, and that could be a place where one of those gods is hiding out, is like, oh yeah, I was just hanging out being worshipped by some Kuo Toa down there or something. Right. Takes on a new guise or whatever, and appears to one of these things, to a group of these, and sort of installs himself as their god, and sort of sops up that belief energy or whatever. Because it does seem like they can kind of pass it up the chain a little bit. It doesn't have to go just to the god. They with the archpriests, they seem to get some of this power too. I think that there's some really interesting room to mess around with that. That's
have either of you used Kuo Toa in a campaign before?
Not seriously. I remember fighting them in one I was in. We were underwater for an extended period of time.
Gross.
Chasing down a relic of some variety. Yeah, it was 3.5. It was rough. We were like 12 or so. So everybody, breathing underwater wasn't the issue. It was just dealing with being underwater was a whole thing. It's complicated. There's a lot of stuff that it changes, but I think I use them. You end up with some of the Sockwagons and Marrow and Merfolk and Sea Elves. They tend to make more appearances. In my experience, I don't go for a lot of underwater stuff because fighting underwater is a pain in the ass.
Yeah, in Paralandia, my setting, there is Kuo Toa exist in caves along the shore, so they're basically reinstated to where they were in the before time in the Forgotten Realms. And what I did was
way back.
Yeah, they so the role players started as castaways. from a big ship battle, and after almost dying to an owl bear, they washed up on the shores of this, or they washed up on an island, fought an owl bear, almost died, got a boat from a guy who asked them to kill the owl bear. Then they just sailed in a direction trying to find somewhere because they didn't know where they were. Landed on an island and basically found a cave of these Kuo Toa and just decided to march on through it to see if they could find anything of value. They found a archpriest conducting a ritual at the very bottom of the cave, and they killed him while he was in the middle of the ritual, spilling his blood on the ritual seal and releasing 4 krakens into the world. And so while they haven't dealt with the Kuo Toa since then, but it's because these krakens are just krakens. They're just running around now.
They're cool. They
don't
got their own thing going.
Yeah. They were just in there, and the Kuo Toa released them. And so there's been a fun catalyst for the major story in my campaign.
Look what you did.
Yeah,
you idiots.
You fucked it up. You fucked it all up. And even on accident. They weren't even asked to do anything with those. They just,
that's even better.
Yep, they just fucking decided to delve this cave.
Better slaughter this here priest in the middle of his ritual.
Yep,
blood in the blood for the blood god.
Yep. So that was a lot of fun, and I wish I had used that god larva idea, because that I think would have been a little bit more satisfying, or at least more satisfying for the role players, maybe. But it wouldn't have necessarily jived with the story I was telling, because now each of these krakens.
I think you could do both still potentially, right? True. Like if it's just a slow burn for the god larva, whereas the krakens are like out and they're doing their thing, but they were just a great evil that's been released, and now there's a god larva here that's been produced that's supposed to put them back or whatever. I don't know.
To go back to their cave that they originally released the krakens. That's a pretty. I'm gonna write that
back
down.
To the beginning.
All right, soldiers of fortune.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I was wondering if that's what campaign that was. But no, and so the other things that I've thought about using them in before. There was a campaign that from fucking way back that was going to include them in like a great big apocalyptic situation where someone was trying to wake up the Leviathan, and the party was going to have to go to, find this reclusive bunch of Kuo Toa who have these ancient archives which have information on like these rituals involved in the sites and things of that nature. The campaign never got to the point where we actually ended up doing that. They were still at the apocalypse before that one. This is a high school game, but yeah, and so that's another one, but that's that basically just ancient knowledge keeper thing, right? Sort of pretty regularly. One of the other ones that I've thought about that before is not with them specifically, but someone who deep down there who's hanging on to passages to the Underdark, or maybe to the elemental plane of water, or some sort of like ancient alien tech kind of Stargate situation going on, where they've got a bunch of runes to some. If you wanted to turn it into like a God, what do they call it? Planeswalker kind of deal, Starfinder or some shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you wanted to turn it into a really crazy thing, like you could send them down there and find some, ancient ruins that are super advanced technology, magic or whatever, and totally take a left turn in your campaign. So that's the kind of thing that I would use them for.
Yeah.
I've never actually used Kuo Toa, but I've never really known much about Kuo Toa either. I look at them and I didn't spend much time reading about them until recently, until for this,
Yeah. That's
so
what we do for us.
I just looked at them and thought, fish people. Oh, it's just another version of Sahuagin, or whatever. And I had a whole freaking campaign that spent like for like 6 months we're in the Underdark, where these things live. And there was a lot of stuff that they would have lended really well to that I sort of hand waved as illithid stuff. No, I like how these are sort of the they're kind of like the shock troops, if you will, for the elder gods and for the big
Mm-hmm.
creepy beyond the veil stuff that um and they're also self-encapsulating where it's like there's all these things that exist, but they all exist because the Kuo-toa made them,
Right.
because they're all tulpas or whatever. Um, so I'm running a game, where I'm my home game where I'm going to absolutely include them because this
Yeah.
sounds like some great to dig up and throw at some people who don't know what they are.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
To tie this back to a one we've taken a stab at in the past, I do think so. Like in third edition 3.5, they have this like really frog like look to them,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like you could draw a parallel or a connection between them and the slad or whatever.
Yeah.
That maybe there's some connection between this like whole shit that Primus is doing way back when in the Kuo Toa, or they're like offshoots of Slad who spent too much time on the material plane or what, what I mean?
Right.
Like there's some sort of thread there,
It's
potentially.
like an angel getting its wings. Yeah, for every Kuo-toa that goes mad, a slot is created.
I mean, because they're like that crazy man,
Yeah.
like chaos shit
Mhm.
that seems to connect the two. Um, the ones that are
And I mean,
less frog-like are not as good for that, though.
and I mean, if you're running a game in your own setting and you're not using Forgotten Realms, even if you are using Forgotten Realms, who's going to police you on it, right?
Yeah, right.
It's your world, do what you want to
Someone,
do, and if
someone in your
and
game
there's
will.
there's a connection there you could make, and you could absolutely make a canon to your world.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But you should
And
also
you
make a
use
canon
that
that all the
cannon to
gods that
shoot
exist.
anyone that. No, sorry.
Yeah.
You should also make a canon that any gods exist in your overworld are also created by
Kuo-toa.
a
Yeah.
secret like
Yeah.
lizard man like
So getting
group
here,
of Kuo-toa.
here before we get to get going to break, I did want to say that the idea of if enough Kuo-toa get together and believe something that happens is and like represented in Warhammer 40K is like the orcs, like they get together enough and they believe something and happens. I actually have a universe setting where that is the case for all thinking people. Anything that can believe something has a little bit of power to put forward that belief, and that's where I described where all of the gods at a certain level came from in that setting, is that it was just the belief of their worshippers, and like one individual could ascend to godhood through enough a collective belief of just the common people believing that they had these supernatural abilities. And I do enjoy that mechanic, and I think that like having gods that were born from the Kuo-toa but then learned to draw that energy from other believers is a really cool way of like having some really nasty intrigue in like the celestial spheres. I mean, that's like a dirty secret. Like, oh, we all came from the muck,
Yeah.
but I'm like a god of
We don't
justice
talk
now.
about that.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
Right.
I
So-
was, just I was about breeding pools. at
yeah,
one
right.
point.
At one
We don't
point,
talk about
real
that.
early, it was all
Yeah.
about the
Used to be-
justice of the weak or the strong over the weak. Like
Yeah.
I used to be the god of armpit slime, but here I am.
look at me now.
I'm blessing crops and shit.
But yeah, so,
Yep.
and then you could have like some kind of like a god killer thing that's based in Kuo-toa like deep lore. It's like, oh, all gods are based on from these creatures, so all you need is like this Kuo-toa spray, and all these gods will be like, whoa. Something more creative than that. But
Well,
something along.
If there's
those
a weapon
lines.
that they believe can kill a god, it can
Right?
kill a
Oh,
god.
yeah, there
right.
you
So
go. Yeah,
then
that's a
you
good
have
point.
this like, piece of fish jawbone that
Mhm. That's cool.
you can
That's a cool idea.
people who've watched a lot of Supernatural are gonna be like, you son of a bitch.
Yeah.
But that exists. The
No,
first
I really
blade.
do. I really do love that sort of like tulpa god. Like
Yeah.
your god's only as strong as how many followers it has. It creates a
It's like
lot of
American Gods kind of feel to it.
right. It's you could play a party of celestial beings essentially that are like vying for control and building temples, tearing down others, and have a really there's a whole like D&D green text that's like 25 pages long that describes this entire session, this entire like campaign that's sort of based on that idea. And so I've always in every one of my games I run, I do something like that, which I know we're getting on a bit of a tangent, but
Oh, it's okay. We're just about to take a break. So.
No, we don't do that ever.
No, not at all.
oh, it's 11:15. It's break
Yep.
time.
Break
Let me
time.
talk
It sure
about
is.
things that we do.
Mm-hmm.
Just fucking pull a hard left out of that.
So yeah, we do other things too. Thanks everybody for joining us. Bye.
Wow.
No,
What a
thanks for
send-off.
watching Table 13. Thank you for joining us tonight. We're just gonna take a little bit of a break, but I'm going to tell you about all the things we do. We do a podcast that comes out every other Friday. One came out last Friday, and one will come out next Friday. Not this Friday, but the following. Dragons of Paralandia. You can find it anywhere you find podcasts. We also stream on here every other Monday, every other Tuesday, the same week, day after another. Gods of Aether and Orphans of the Apocalypse. This coming Monday, we are down a dungeon master due to some
Dungeon
emergencies.
Master down.
So
Dungeon
we are
Master
going
down.
to be doing Monster of the Week, and Eric's running it, so now he can't get out of it because we've said it on,
It's
on
real.
live television.
That means we
So-
just decided for all the people who hadn't made that decision. I guess it's just John. So
Oh.
Sucks,
Oh, I thought
bags.
we
You
were
suck.
talking about it, so I
So-
assumed that we were doing it. If we're
Anyway.
not doing it, then I'll let you all know.
we are, I
Um,
think.
We're
Now
we're
we
gonna be
are.
live, and we're gonna play something.
Something.
And hopefully it's Eric running us through Monster of the Week, so I can play in Monster of the Week and run it for one. And then the next day, I'm not sure what we're doing yet, but we're gonna be live both days.
Probably another of the same.
Cool.
Possibly the same thing. But we will. That's yet to be determined. And then every Thursday we do this. Next Thursday we will have. Oh my God, I can't. I'll let everybody know the name of the person
Cool.
that we're
Oh,
doing
it's the
next time.
guest this week.
Yes, we'll have
Yep.
a guest
Oh,
next
shit.
week.
Next week.
And I
Or,
know that
well,
they mix. It's somebody who mixes like horror and
Yes.
storytelling, and it's really cool. Really perfect for the season
Yeah.
as well. So join us then for
That
while we pester somebody with a bunch of questions.
Yeah.
Other than that,
we'll even have a name when we come back.
We will.
we will. I promise you. I know the name. I don't know how to say it. So I have to look at it to learn how to say it.
That's fair.
We also have a Discord channel where you can join us there. We have people playing all sorts of right now. There's a ton of people playing Among Us and
So
Phasmophobia. And then there's games running too, like D&D games. Like the thing we do, and other systems too. And if you like us enough to throw money at us, we have a Patreon where you can throw money at us, or you can subscribe to us here on Twitch. Down in the corner somewhere, there's a button that says subscribe. You should hit that, and then hit it again, and hit all the buttons that lead to you subscribing, or follow us if you want to do that. We will be back in 17 minutes and 32 seconds.
You're the worst.
From our break.
Exactly. Absolutely exactly.
Actually, 15. 15 minutes.
Hi everybody. We are back from break.
Yeah, boy.
Refresh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We are talking about Kuo Toa, their habits, their abilities, and some of the weird shit you can do with them in your campaigns. Don't miss out. They're really cool. I think that they're one of those.
Don't miss out.
Don't miss out on.
Supplies are going quickly.
I mean, like you yourself said that you missed out on using them in a campaign that was
absolutely did.
mostly in the Underdark where they live. So don't miss out on
They
these
do hang
events.
out down there.
They do.
They're a cool wrench to throw in the works in your in a bunch of other conventional subterranean Underdark races. You can make something that doesn't fit the standard mold of just like, well, I guess they're still pretty much torturous slavers if you follow
Right.
the
the lore,
the
Forgotten
Feyreal
Realms,
lore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of the idea here, right? Is like you could take
That's the
creatures.
Underdark. Yeah.
Like think about bog bears, right? Like
Mhm.
Yeah.
you could take creatures, you take all their lore, and then you just put it all in a big bag, and then you just pick out the things that
Yeah.
that you want and
Like
and
3
fill in the
cool
blanks.
bits. Yeah.
Right. And the cool bits on these are the things we've gone over, the things that are, their ability, their affinity for creating gods, essentially.
Yep.
Their kind of weird madness. Um, and then I think like sort of their history and how they've been pushed back and how they were
Mm-hmm.
some of the oldest things that have been pushed into a corner somewhere. Um, and you could just put those together with a bunch of other stuff in the middle, and then you've got a big bad. You've got
Yep.
a society of people that maybe created the universe and just don't even
Right.
know it.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting, yeah, there's some, you could make them very important. And if you want to do some really weird meta stuff with your campaign, these are guys that are already set up to be built for that stuff.
Yep.
They've already got that tied into who they are and what they do, kind of thing. Which I think is pretty interesting. I think that they've got a lot of beef with a lot of the other
Mm-hmm.
like races in the Underdark and in the deep like waters. So there's good reason for the party to be able to potentially interact with them on positive terms if there's someone else that's threatening them that they can enlist the party's aid against, or that the party can do something helpful for them and they see that they're maybe not such bad folks in the first after all, or they can make a god larva out of one of them or something.
And well, that was something that's interesting too, is like the god larva does not have to be either A, on the Kuo Toa's side, or B, against the party.
That's
One of the
interesting.
things that was mentioned is like when the Kuo Toa's larva is created, this god larva is created, if the party is not overly hostile towards it, like dealing damage to it, it may not outright attack them. It may just seek to retreat under the waves with the Kuo Toa followers. But if you kill Kuo Toa followers of that new god in his presence, or try to kill the, CR5, fighter god, you're gonna, it's going to react negatively
Right.
to you. But that would be interesting. Like, imagine you have a party that the druid kills a bunch of Kuo Toa in like a bear form, and then all of a sudden there's this like baby bear god larva, and the party just adopts it, and you end up having kind of a weird like proto demigod on your side because you adopted this Kuo Toa god larva into your party. So there's a lot of interesting stuff that you could do with these guys because of their god making ability, which I think is the most interesting part of their character. If you take that away, they're just fish goblins, basically.
Yep.
Underdark fish
Yeah,
goblins.
they're just fodder,
Yeah.
like low level, or they're a little higher level again, toward fifth. They used to be like 10th level adventure kind of fights on their introduction, but now they're kind of tapered down a bit. The higher ranking stuff now in fifth, you can definitely, and if you put them in mass, you can definitely throw them at a party of that scale and start threatening them. But
especially backed with some like the hierarchies, like a priest backed with a few whips, backed with a few of the base Kuo Toa,
a group of the monitors or whatever.
Right.
Which are these monks, basic, that like the melee combat. They're focused on that sort of subduing people and things like that. And they've got these other like sticky like resin based abilities that go back, and so you can start to get into some weird junk there if you because they're supposed to they like produce this slime or whatever naturally that makes them slippery, but they can like turn into, or like they can use in the process of making a really sticky substance. So they could be using that in their melee efforts somehow. If they were trying to be all grabby, they could like have, do like a little giant situation and just snatch you up or something. Yep. But so there's a lot of weird, goofy things like that. I think that the old ancient secret stuff, though, is my favorite part about them. Obviously, the creating gods is a really cool aspect, and that ability to sort of attribute divinity to whatever is something that like a lot of other races have a hand wave that's similar to that, but it's not as strong and full, like, all encompassing, I guess, like as like, no, they just like make reality
Make
change so
gods.
that it
Yep.
happens that way. And it's like, oh, okay. Like elves, no magic. And they know really complicated runes and blah, blah, blah. They've been studying it for eons. So yeah, they can pretty much do whatever. But
Right.
like these guys literally just like think something and it happens if they think it hard enough. And
Enough of them think it. Yeah.
yeah, right. Yeah. And that's wild and different. There was another one that was pretty interesting. There's some like lightning based abilities as you go back in some of the editions for no real reason that are kind of attributed to them. They don't have like resistances to it, and they're like frequently underwater.
What they were talking about was what I had seen was just like getting like some higher ranking, or at least some like more pious, if you will, Kuo Toa together. They can basically conjure lightning,
Yep.
and
Yep.
stuff like
Yep.
that.
Oh,
Which I think is
Yeah,
just
that
an
was the
idea.
old system stuff. Yeah. That's
see, I thought it was
the
just like
purpose of-
you get a group of them together was what I remembered reading. They just like there was like a static charge thing that built up, and they just like.
the idea is
But
it's
I
like a
probably read
buildup
that
of
wrong.
their sheer will of will to power.
Right,
basically,
sure.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah,
Oh,
I
so you
think
could
that's
have
like
that
funny.
manifest in interesting ways, like give Kuo Toa in your system like a will like ability that like, hey, if they all
Or-
roll a will save, they get a level 1 spell as a group on this like legendary action kind of idea.
Or there's just like random wild magic effects that
Right.
happen around them or something.
Oh, that would be a cool idea too. Yeah.
Because they just kind of like collectively bend reality a little. I think there's some cool room for that. And if you get a very powerful, like whatever the priest king or whatever, who's got a lot of this influence, maybe they have like this, sort of orb of influence that they can bend reality a little on, that like, maybe things follow cartoon rules, and when people fall off of stuff they like go flat and then like pop back up or what, you know what I
Oh
mean?
my
Or
God,
like
that'd be
accordion or something,
Right.
and like because he saw one old scroll or what, I don't know. Yeah, but
So here's a thought.
yeah,
Here's, a group of Kuo Toa in the Underdark that run a sovereign glue factory.
there you go.
I love it.
No
it's-
Universal Solvent anywhere around them.
No,
Yeah.
it's just sovereign glue.
Such a
Thousands of
serious
Kuo
problem.
Toa working the lines of production, run by some archpriest somewhere, just off in the corner of the Underdark.
It's wonderful. I like that a lot. The like it's like it's like a Ford Village or something, you know what I mean? Like one of the old, like it's you change that whole idea of the concept. They're just all like, it's a shitty like work village, like kind of situation, basically. Like a bunch of people, there's only one factory in town, so they all buy
Right.
stuff from the company
Everybody-
store, so they
Oh my
all like
God.
kind of it's like that kind of
I'm
situation.
getting thoughts of like what's that game that was just put out by Obsidian? Your
Outer
Borderlands
Worlds?
or Outer Worlds. Yeah.
The Outer Worlds,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Like that with those like canning or sardine facilities, and everybody everybody who lives on that planet works at that factory,
Yeah.
basically.
That's what you do, because that's what people are there for. Kind of. There wouldn't be people there if there wasn't that, like that kind of an idea. It was really funny because that fits into this, this sort of like idea of them being sort of more manipulatable or whatever, sort of weak-willed as a people or something, sort of just waiting to be taken advantage of by one of their number that rises into favor of one of their made up gods and kind of decides to take advantage of everyone. Like there is this weird vicious cycle in the like society design where people who get into power and then go mad, which is like really common.
Mhm.
There's no like check or balance for like a mad priest king.
No.
So then everybody's kind of wild and crazy then,
Right.
because they're all following that lead. Which it's this, but it seems like that's kind of the end game final result in the Faerun lore. Basically, like most of these these large collections of these end up in the hands of someone who's gone crazy, basically, and are not really super on it anymore, which is why they're such assholes. But I think, like if you're willing to take it to just like a slightly less extreme degree and do stuff like that, where you've got the sovereign glue factory,
Sovereign Glue Inc. We stick together.
Funny.
Oh my goodness.
Oh man.
There's a lot of interesting stuff that you can do with the Kuo Toa, and I highly suggest anyone watching this to take a look at using them in your in campaigns. Like I mean, don't use them if you're doing something completely different and you don't want to just fish people crashing your party.
Do it.
But like you could use these guys in like even a more modern setting as like sewer dwellers, or that kind of thing. Like where you have this race of Godmakers that live in the sewers of this major metropolitan area. And every so often the city has to put down some god that gets spawned in the undersewers.
Yeah, doing some like Dresden Files kind of situation where
that kind of thing.
Instead of gators, it's like old gods.
Yeah, old gods.
Yeah.
It's like Cthulhu's coming up my toilet again.
Damn it!
Coming up the pipes.
Again.
So it would be
get new warding on the plumbing.
The silver lining must have rubbed off. But they fit in a lot of settings, and they work really well. I think it's because of that old demonology, or not demonology, but like old gods, the Lovecraftian horror idea. It does fit well into like the because every setting has like a deep dark. If you go down deep enough, there is some kind of unknown, where the rules and laws begin to break down and the sleeping ones dwell kind of idea. And these guys are like the heralds of that in terms of Forgotten Realms and in other settings as well, if you so choose. So they are definitely worth a look if you're looking for something creepy to put in your campaign. Because they also lead to a lot of shit too, like Illithids, the Mind Flayers, Abeloths, in the Forgotten Realms. Like they're good first introduction to those kinds of monsters that are maybe a little bit too high for like a level 5 party. But you put one whip and 3 ran like normal Kuo Toa in a group, set them after a group of level 3s, like 4 level 3s. That's a pretty hairy fight. And that's an excellent introduction to like that kind of old god.
Yeah, hook them into that, plight or whatever.
Exactly.
Like, okay, why were they here? Where were they from? You got to track down the old crusty sailor who's familiar with them, because nobody else has ever seen the fish people before. And like, then you can start and down this whole track. You got to find some old ruined lighthouse where there's a journal that talks about where you can go and how you can get their attention.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
It's only visible by moonlight on high tide on this day, or what, and so on down the line. And you can find yourself, they are good for that sort of, if you want to edge into horror a little bit. I think they're really good for that, because it just puts people in that mindset of the Lovecraftian stuff if they're familiar with that in any way. And if they're not, fish are just other. They're really great to describe as just, they smell wrong, they look weird, you can't read them, like they're just staring at you blank, and and then they just would kind of dispassionately walk slice through folks as they're doing all that. You wouldn't be able to tell if they were excited and happy about something or not. And they're good for that, like really kind of creepy that Lovecraftian vibe for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is STYAB for tonight, everybody. That was
we're gonna call it.
Cool. Well, yeah. So did anyone more have anything to add?
See if I have anything else to scramble over with. I really don't have a ton. Oh, I do remember. So I remember reading somewhere the what is it, blib dual ploop, or whatever poop, is that she doesn't actually know anything. That's her whole bag. Is that like, well, you know, they believe that that's true of her because she keeps saying it. That's just what they made her to like say. And that it's just all this con that she's trying to keep running,
Yeah,
basically,
right.
is that like they don't, so no one ever finds out that she doesn't really, know any of these great ancient secrets. She has to keep leading on, and then she is also frequently like overinflates her, like position and the standing of the Kuo Toa, and all that stuff, because she's just like super prideful or whatever, which I think is kind of a funny bit as well.
A god of fish people being super
Just,
prideful over secrets that don't mean anything.
she's a sham. Yeah, like the whole thing is she's like a created nothingness god, and then she ends up, but she's, yeah, like takes this struggle of her people, against the surface dwellers. Like that's pretty much what she's that embodied, is like, oh
Is
man,
she
fuck those
depicted as a fish
assholes.
person too?
She
Yeah, she's
is
depicted as a
humanoid.
human woman, naked human woman with the head of a lobster and the
Yeah.
claws of a lobster too, I believe.
I believe that's correct. Yeah.
Yes.
Which is nice and creepy to think about, because you think
Not-
of a lobster head,
yeah.
and then you just slap that on top of a human body.
Right. Not great.
It's nice.
Not a
great.
good mixture.
I wonder
And
if
it's supposed
that's
to have
like,
come, yeah, it's like a statue that fell into the water or something, like a broken statue that they put claws in a head on
Right.
or something.
Yeah, exactly.
it makes you wonder, like, what showed itself to the Kuo Toa that made them sort of create this thing, right?
Right.
It
Mhm.
would have had to be somebody who came up to them and was like, "I know everything," and they had to believe him, and it was bullshit, right?
I mean, it
And
could
then
have
they sort
just.
of embodied that thing and created this other thing that literally that
Right.
knew everything but didn't actually know
Didn't
it.
actually know anything.
I
Yeah.
mean, they could have just like some sailor could have had a unlucky day and like knocked a statue overboard, and it drops down and like crushes a lobster that's about to steal some like younglings out of the eggs, and like boom, there's a D. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
it's like that with them. So it could have been even that simple in the beginning. It just like balloons, because you get everybody's added belief to it. It's like, any sort of, it's like some fake news meme shit or whatever. Like, it just keeps growing, and yeah, or Thin Man or whatever, like it takes on a life of its own eventually, kind of deal. Which I think they're cool because of that.
Right.
Your party could create a god without even realizing it.
Right.
And that's
It
fun.
had to be something just absolutely.
Like, what the fuck is happening? And they've got to like,
Right.
yeah, they've got the clip show where you realize like,
Oh.
oh yeah, you remember when you did this, and then this happened, and while you were doing this happened, and they were actually involved in this the whole time, and like, oh my god, we've been chasing down a god that we created for the past 6 months. Like, holy fuck.
With some strange, like, aberrant Rue Goldberg machine
Yeah, right.
of
like-
consequences.
That like, it didn't even exist when we set out to chase it down yet, kind of thing. Like, that's,
would
yeah,
be fun.
that would be a fun little
Yeah, that'd be
campaign
really
too.
cool.
It's a, yeah, self-fulfilling prophecy kind of deal. You got to get a time travel loop that goes back to the beginning with that, then, just so it's all self-contained. It's like right back to the beginning.
Right. They tip over the first domino. That sets
Mhm.
off the mess. Well, anyway, we're basically at
I think,
midnight,
yeah.
so
Now we're
Now
probably out.
we're out of stuff. Yeah.
we've run out, guys. We normally don't run out. We've run out. We have nothing else to say to you.
I could just talk more. There's more things I could say, but it wouldn't be super
Well, I mean,
meaningful.
I could say things too. I suppose. How was your day, Eric?
Well, I meant like about Kuo Toa, but
Oh, okay.
nobody cares about my day. It was all right though.
I care. Thanks
so
everybody
you all
for
know
joining us.
it wasn't bad.
See us next Thursday on table 13. Be there, be square, while we interrogate Gehenna Gaming. about
Kinda.
horror and a lot of. I think it's going to be mostly that because we're almost to Halloween. You know,
It's that
the greatest
spooky
holiday of all.
season.
So I think we're going to talk about sort of horror and how you can sort of bring it into your game and into your world and into your stories or whatever you're doing.
Which is super cool because I suck at it.
I've gotten better.
You are good
but
at it. I had a fun time.
but it's hard. It's definitely it's these different styles of running games and telling stories other than just the hero's journey are difficult because I think that's, you know, whenever you're looking at games like D&D or whatever, that's sort of like the model for it, you know, the Lord of the Rings or the Harry Potter, you know. So trying to bring in something like horror or intrigue or you know, like mysteries to solve, it's definitely another game entirely. But hopefully we can shed some light on that. So if you are, you know, looking into running some games like that or want to, you know, sort of broaden your gaming experience, maybe we can help with that. But until next time, join our Discord and hang out with us.
Next time.
Next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.